Uh-oh. We good?
Not yet.
Okay.
Welcome to the morning show. Joe Tolle, how are you, sir?
Good morning. Good morning. I am in the as we were talking about before we start, I'm in the middle of backup hell. I'm backing up like 15 years worth of raw video and probably 15 years of finished projects. So, yeah, my next few days are copying files and creating a uh, a file system that makes sense. Very exciting, but it's
Well, hold that thought, and I'm going to come back and ask you a couple questions. Everybody, we need to thank Elka Suspension for always being there for ATV Talk. They're bringing all of these shows to you, all of our guests, all of the content. Elka is a huge supporter of ATV Talk and the ATV industry in general. If you look at all the major series, all the major recreational machines being built, they're using Elka shocks, and there's a reason. It's a great product. They're a leader in the industry in development and design. So if you're driving a truck, a UTV, or an ATV, go out and get some Elka shocks for your machines. We know you're going to love them because it's what we use exclusively. Joe uses them as well in some of his tests, so he likes them as well. And there's so many other people using them. Look at Joel Hetrick dominating the ATV world on Elka shocks. Bryson Neal on Elka shocks. So that's just a few of the guys out there that are doing it. We all got to take vacations, so Arizona is a great place to go. I know it's hot, but Antelope Slot Canyon Tours will show you things that you've never seen before. The Earth is an amazing place. These views are once in a lifetime because the canyon changes every year and almost every time you walk through it. So book a tour with Antelope Slot Canyon Tours on your next vacation, whether you're in Arizona or Nevada, because Nevada has helicopter flights or bus rides to the canyons so that you can take your tour. Well, we'll get right in deep depth with the show because Joe's already told us about his endeavor into backing up materials. Um, do you get to watch any of the videos that you're uploading or doing anything like that, or have you found anything that you forgot about while you were doing this?
not really. Maybe just some old action stuff. Just reminders of projects I'd done in the past. I was looking at some of the side by side stuff I'd done with Alan Knowles out there in California, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that was 11 years ago. Holy, it just seems like it was last year, a year before, but just a lot of stuff. It's a pain to keep it all. A lot of editors don't. But I think it's we dig into the history of bikes, quads so much, side by sides that it's a really good asset to have all that old footage in completed format in case we might launch a Rumble channel. We don't know. YouTube is a space, but it's a crowded space. They don't always send you to all your subscribers. So at some point we might just say, you know what, Rumble sends a notification to every single person that subscribes to your channel. So while it's a growing platform, it's something we might do because I think there's a dedicated audience there that will actually get notifications of your stuff. So it's good like that. It's it's valuable to keep it all, to have this library of stuff. So to me, it's worth a few days' work to store it, preserve it, duplicate it. In case one drive dies, we've got it on two drives. So it's boring. I don't want to spend too much time on it, but I do want to. I did want to mention something about your Elka stuff because I was talking to Elka the other day, and you know, most of what we've got in the ATV space right now is four by fours. We have a couple sport machines left, but most of them are four by fours, and most of these four by fours don't have rebuildable suspension. Like we just tested the 25 Grizzly 700, which is doing amazing. I think that video might hit 25,000 views in week one, which is pretty darn good for a sport utility four by four that's been around for 19 years. And it's changed. I wouldn't say it hasn't changed much. It's changed significantly where it's needed to, but that thing is getting that thing is getting a lot of good views, and the stock shocks aren't bad. But what people don't, may not realize is by year two, if you like that thing and you ride it a lot, like let me ask you, Leonard,
Go ahead.
how often do you guys typically service a shock before you go in and you change the oil? In your experience, how long do you think it is before the oil and the materials in a shock, because the shock body itself, the components pollute the oil somewhat, just like in an engine, the moving parts
So
pollute.
So while you're taking the lead on the show, while I'm sending messages in the chat, that's great. Way to pick that up, Joe. Thank you very much, everybody. That's why I have Joe on the show, because he's a seasoned professional, and I'm just the beginner here, and I learned so much from this guy. But to answer your question, I'm going to break it down into two or three, maybe four different little parts. Depending on the level of Elka shock that I'm using, whether it be a stage 5, 4, or your legacy brand. Your legacy brand shocks get serviced on a lower rate, where they probably should be serviced on a higher rate because they don't
I get it.
have the reservoir. But you're also talking about a totally different level of rider. You're talking about generally a mid-level rider, entry-level rider that's not really into the same amount of maintenance. They may be doing the oil changes and the air filter stuff, but they're not into cleaning, doing the bushings, servicing the shocks, re-greasing their linkage, things like that. Maybe because somebody hasn't taught them. Uh, Once a season, I would like to see those shocks serviced. It's probably going to be every 2 to 3 seasons before they are serviced. Um, it's not overly expensive, but the longer you go, then you're into seal heads and some parts that you maybe not have had to buy if you serviced them earlier. Um, your stage 4s and your stage 5s, I recommend, like, the stage 5s are for the really performance guys. You're looking for the ultimate in performance. You want to service those things. For the recreational guy, if you're going, it's kind of hard to break it down. Let's say 25, 30 hours of riding, maybe more. Yeah, you definitely want to service those shocks, because your oil is all probably cooked already. The bike's not going to work the same. It still works great because it's a great shock and it still functions, but the oil needs to be replaced so the shock doesn't wear out. I would service the stage 4s in the same rate because it's an excellent functioning shock too. Even though it doesn't work at the same level as the 5, they're still, the best way to put this, they're high performance componentry. So it's like, would you not change the oil in your high performance engine?
Well, and I think, because I just think this is something worth noting is, typically if you have like an aftermarket shock, like an Elka, usually it's a higher quality component than an OEM shock. Usually, I think most mechanics would agree, probably agree. You know, um, what comes on a Grizzly, what comes on a lower level Outlander, what comes on all the Sportsmans except the very top Sportsman S that has, reservoir equipped Walker Evans. 90%, 95% of all these utility shocks are not rebuildable. And you see these shocks on these bikes for the life of the bike. And I was talking to Elka, like, man, it's one thing to try to sell, a guy who has something like a Grizzly or a Rancher or a Sportsman 570. It's one thing to try to sell these guys like, hey, you need a performance shock. And they're like, well, I'm not a racer. I don't really need a performance shock. And maybe I like the ride of my bike. But I think what a lot of people who have these machines don't realize is if you ride your four-wheeler a lot, if you go ride every other weekend or you have it on your property and you ride it all the time, in 2 years, you might be like, yeah, this thing's still great. But if you could get on it and ride it brand new right next to your 2-year-old quad that does not have serviceable shocks, I think you'd notice a pretty big difference in the performance of the suspension. So,
Let me interrupt you. Hold your thought. Let me interrupt you here for a second. You brought up a key term. You're not racing. Okay, remember, I didn't bring that term up. You did. The
Sure.
consumer generally does. And they say, well, I'm not racing. And okay, well, that has nothing in the world to do with what we're talking about.
Right. Correct.
Performance of function of the ride is all we care about. So when I'm talking to you about building your machine and I want to put a level of shock on there that's going to perform, you call me or you're calling another professional, you're looking for a desired level of performance. I cannot sell you something that's going to not give you that desired level. So when I put you on a stage five, I'm putting you on there because your expectation uh, is a wow factor. How good is this machine going to work when I throw my leg over? If I put you on a legacy for a very brief moment in time, it's going to have great performance, but then it's going to drop off. Nothing against the legacy shock. It's not a stage five. Doesn't work like a stage five. They are so far advanced that they do incredible things. Dude, just watch the professional guys running the shocks. The bikes are doing things that they would never have done before with the level of shocks. And I don't want to bring up a different manufacturer, but I talked to uh, Wayne over there at PEP, and he's having to raise his bar to keep up. And he's a super, super intelligent guy. You and I have both talked to him many times. That guy's freaking off the charts smart. And when he's freaking struggling to keep up, it's because the technology is getting so good. So let's take the term racing out of it and go with desired level of performance. So if you take your Outlander that you've been riding for 3 years and the shocks are basically shot, even though you still love it and it still rides great and it does everything you want. When you put that new shock on there, you are going to be amazed at how much better the performance of ride is and how much it takes away from the body strain that you go through. You know this, Joe. You're a professional athlete to a point with your jujitsu and the things that you've done. You know that you have to make sure that your body is taken care of. Well, that's what these shocks are going to do for you when you upgrade them on your older machines. Didn't mean to interrupt your thought. You were on a great line there, and I just wanted to get that racing definition taken care of because it matters.
Well, yeah, and I think most of the guys that own these don't. I think a lot of guys that own these utilities don't race. They don't race. They're not aspiring to race. It's a weekend warrior machine. They have good mud protection. Most of these newer ones are, the Grizzlies, the Outlanders, whether you're talking a single cylinder or a twin, like these are pretty good handling bikes. Most of them that most of the manufacturers are selling. But I think one big thing people are missing out on, like this Grizzly we have has decent stock suspension, and this bike really kind of made me think about it. Like the suspension's pretty good. Like it's pretty plush. It offers pretty good bottoming resistance. It's, all around factory shock. It's not bad. And, you know, you'll have a lot of fun with it. But I think what a lot of people miss is if your bike's new and on day one, you're not like, man, I need aftermarket shocks. Okay, cool. You don't. Maybe you don't. Maybe you don't need that on day one. You're satisfied. But I think the main point I'm getting at is like if by year two, if you ride a lot, the oil's breaking down. That shock is not the same shock at year two as it was on ride one or ride 4 or 5 after you just finished breaking them in. Like they're wearing. The oil's breaking down. The damping is completely different. I don't know about the Gen 3 Outlanders, but I know on the Gen 2 Outlanders from Can-Am that they were just using a gas charged shock. It wasn't like they were running a Fox QS3 or an RC2. These are just non-rebuildable preload adjustable shocks, but they use a very thin spring, and by 1,000 miles, those things are breaking down to the point that I think some companies make like a spring stiffener that you can put in there that'll add more preload to the spring. I know they do them on side by sides that will add the spring rate back because the springs degrade so fast. So it's not just the outside that's doing it, it's the inside too. And I don't know. I just had an interesting conversation with Elka last week about the fact that these things shouldn't just be marketed as a performance product, which they are, they're also for anybody who has a four-wheel drive that's been riding it for a while. You probably need some shocks, and you can't do anything with what you have. So even like a stage one, even the most entry level Alka shock is at least, it's going to be custom valve, custom sprung. So you're probably going to get an increase in performance whether you care or not. But then you have a shock that you can at least maintain for the rest of the life of the bike if you stay on top of it and keep the oil clean and service it. So I don't know. It was just an interesting conversation we were having.
That's that's awesome. I want to shift gears on you.
Let's go.
We were going to come back to your test of that 700. I have questions, but we were in the middle of a discussion uh, a couple of shows back where we were talking about, internet builds or catalog builds. And then I did a show by myself where I talked to just the chat, and we really got into this LT250, builds where the guys were asking for specific product. So I'm going to tell you right off, guys, I'm still working on the suspension portion of it. There are some differences. There are some things out there. I don't have any information, but I really got into deep conversation about manufacturing componentry for the LT250. And Joe, I want you to chime in anytime that you're ready because I know that you and I discussed it briefly. Um, so you guys asked for a cylinder. Um, Unfortunately, to build you a cylinder, the development process is about 2 years. There's a huge dollar investment, um, and it would take a very high number of cylinders sold to return that. And we would have to decide many different things in the development process. Does the power valve still stay in the cylinder? Does it get removed? Does it, how are we going to build this cylinder? There has been one on the drawing board, but it never went further because of the consumer base. I don't believe they're ready to spend $2,500 on a cylinder for an LT250. I do not believe that the LT250 consumer base is ready for this.
Is that the same
Um,
price? Is that the same price as what a TRX cylinder is? Or
through
is
our
that
through the company that I'm affiliated with. I cannot tell you what the other guys are doing because I can't keep up with what I got. And
no worries? Yeah, okay. I just wondered if there was a premium tacked on top of it because it would be a new thing, smaller volume, but yeah, same price as a TRX.
you
You're saying.
can't do smaller volume. You have to do that full batch of the first run and machine them all, and then sell them all to get your money back. And if you don't get your money back, what's the point of doing it?
Sure.
We're not in business to lose money, guys. And here's the one thing about the ATV consumer base. So if I tell you, okay, it's going to take me 2 years, I need you to pre-order it. Okay. I didn't say I was going to charge you for it. I just need you to pre-order it and lock your order in. So you're guaranteeing me that if I build this, you're going to buy it. I can't get the number of people that scream for these cylinders to put their money where their mouth is. They screamed and screamed for pipes. We built them. Where are you guys? You didn't buy. So that's where I
And
am
that's,
with the manufacturing portion of it. I mean, I've sold quite a few, but I didn't sell near the numbers that they said I would. Um, the ATC guys told me that they would buy them. I can't keep up with the sales. I'm still struggling to catch up to the ATC guys. So
so what do you think the difference is, Leonard, between obviously the TRX and the ATC? These were the premium bikes. These were I mean, somebody will want to argue. I mean, if you got a Takati and you've got like an 86, like the last gen, yeah,
that's a
okay, that's like the coolest looking three wheeler ever built production. I think my personal opinion, I don't talk about looks and reviews, but since we're just shooting the shit, I mean, I think that thing is probably the coolest looking production three wheeler ever made. I love it, but there weren't as many of them out there. And once the Honda was done, you couldn't beat the Honda. And like ATC TRX, I mean, look how the TRX carried the sport. Do you think there's less LT 250s out there than the TRX, even though it had a longer production run from 80, 87 to 92? I'm just counting the 85, 86 because it was such a different engine.
Let's just go recreational looks. Look at the dunes. You hardly see them. You hardly see the 250s. I mean, there's a fair amount out there, but you're talking probably 10 to 1 TRX 250Rs that were sold. And then you take all the aftermarket 250Rs that were built, I mean, there's no comparison. And the LT 500 is a cult following machine. And we're still stumped on if the cylinder for that, if you would have built the cylinder for that 5 years ago, okay. But now I don't think the market would support it either. Even though there's center cases out there for them. That's another thing that to make big bores or strokers for the LT 250, you have to change the center cases because the center cases just are not strong enough to handle it. Why do you think there's no big bore for an LT 250?
So you think that the lack of interest in the LT 250 is more based on there just weren't as many sold.
Yeah, and I don't think that people that want to build them want to spend the same kind of money as a 250R guy would.
Got it. Because it wasn't the same quite. It was the same class, but it wasn't quite the same caliber of machine.
Right. The quality that knew it was a great machine. It was competitive to a point in the 250 class. They won some races. They had some success, but when you break it down for longevity of life, because one of our team members for a long time wouldn't get off the Suzuki. So we kept trying and had to buy a new one and buy a new one and buy a new one and buy a new one. And when you're buying two or three new back then, even though they weren't as expensive as they are now, when you have to buy two machines a year, sometimes three to make it through a season, um, that's that's costly even at the rate that it was back then. I mean, the motors just didn't hold up, and you use that machine 2 or 3 years. You roll into a practice bike, and you're just constantly fixing the engine or fixing something on the chassis.
Yeah.
And
Back then, you go buy three LT 250s for 9 grand.
yeah, so I mean, I'm not trying to bash on the LT 250s. Chime in the chat, guys. I really am not. I'm really diving deep into this, trying to do the research so that when I come to you and talk to you about it, I have facts. And if I'm missing something, like I didn't know about a couple of the AR manufacturers, the guys reached out to me in the DMs, and that was great. I really appreciated that. I have not finished talking to all of those people. I have a customer and a friend that works on a lot of LT stuff, and he's trying to help educate me and showing me some things. Um,
Lenny,
yeah,
did you
Nick,
fall
Nick,
off?
I agree. No, there was he said something good in the chat, and I was trying to read it. Nick, you're kind of right. The Honda was such a great platform; it overshadowed everything, and Honda had a better name than Suzuki. Um, Honda doesn't have a great name now. They may in certain environments, but I mean, I love
They
Honda.
got
Don't get me wrong.
they got a great name for making cars.
Yeah, we own a Honda car.
They make some great dirt bikes too. I'd own them happily.
Yeah, that this car that my wife bought, my God, I love the thing, and I hate cars. I hate driving cars because I drive a truck most of my whole life. I actually enjoy driving this car just because it's so functional. You can't hear anything. There's no road noise. There's no noise from the engine. I mean, it's a spectacular car. I took her to the dealership to buy a small UTV style functional work car, and she rolls out of there with an Accord touring car. And I'm like, that's not what I wanted you to, what, my lawnmower is great. I'm sure it
Yeah, I love my lawnmower. I,
is.
I gotta say, like 15 years ago, 20 years ago, I was like growing up, my family had Toros and Craftsmans, and I can't believe we're so desperate. We're actually talking about Honda lawnmowers. This is terrible. But I will just say, and I'll be done with Honda. Um, I switched from Toros and Craftsmans because I had grass. Like I lived in the hood, and sometimes we'd let the grass get kind of tall because we were lazy. And me, and it whined around the front wheel of that thing, and it had like a plastic axle. It would break the front wheel off, and I'm finally like, oh, screw this, man! I'm buying a Honda lawnmowers, and I've owned two, and I never have to get anything fixed. Every spring they just start, they go, sharpen the blade once a year, change the oil once a year. Good
Right,
to go.
right.
That's all you need. Great, best lawnmowers on earth. That's all I got to say. Thanks, Honda.
Yeah, well, I didn't mean to get off on that tangent, but I just wanted to let everybody know in the chat that I am trying to answer your questions on the information about the LT 250 because um, I really enjoyed that conversation with the chat where they were talking about it and throwing their ideas out there and giving me the information.
So
Right at
where are the
this
guys?
moment, right at this moment, in my private building where I work for my other company, I am assembling an 87 LT 250 as we speak, going through new bearings, linkages. We rebuilt the engine. It has a form of a front end on it, which I'm extremely unhappy with, but I will make it work and I'll make it function and I'll make it do everything it's supposed to.
Now
Um,
I can't ask. Now I can't ask what's on it.
um, you can't I will have all that information and put it all out there. I'll even put some pictures up of it when I get a little farther along. um, the chassis is going together nicely. The motor went really well. So the hardware seems to be in pretty good condition. The machine was not destroyed in any way, shape, or form when I received it, so that was a blessing. But
What are you doing for shocks?
Elka,
Oh, I
Elka,
didn't know Elka made shocks for the LT
Elka front.
250s.
Yep, Elka fronts. Yep, and
Okay,
they work with that AR manufacturer that has that, so the machine will work good. The customer opted to service the rear, so that's what we did is rebuilt the rear and just serviced it. Didn't change the valving because they didn't want to get into that or the spring. They just
sweet.
seal, oil, put it back together. Sometimes you got to do that. This will be a dune beauty, not an off-road toy at all. Ride it in the dunes a few times a year, wipe it down, put it away in the garage. Uh, but these are just things. So when I'm talking to the guys in the chat and I'm talking to you, I'm actually building this machine and doing it so I have the understanding of some of the problems that you go through when you're putting that particular machine together. So it's a lot of fun. I was actually out there last night, super late, working on it, laying it all out, trying to figure out where all the pieces go. Because when you take them apart and 6 months later you go to put it back together, you forget where some of the things go. But there's some good stuff there. It's not a bad, it's not as bad as some people make them sound. But those aftermarket arms, bro, dude, please. Maybe I'm just spoiled because I deal with rolls so long.
I think so.
Yeah,
I
that's
think
probably it. That's probably
I think
it.
I think so. I think there's as long as they're welded well and they're made out of good quality material and the geometry is somewhere in the ballpark, I'm sure it's a big upgrade from stock.
I think for that machine, the way they've set them up, it's there's too many adjustments for the general consumer. Um,
And yeah, and I think that's a big thing, even with a brand like, okay, Mike, in case you're listening, I love you. But like a Walsh arm, you know, you can get Walsh arms for some bikes, or a roll design for the same bike, and the roll design will have no adjustment, no camber caster. Correct me if I'm wrong. Like the Raptor 700, you can't get camber. I don't think the roll designs are camber and caster adjustable. Well, they're
The roll design for the Raptor
yeah,
has that adjustment. They preset it for you
right.
where you want it, but you can adjust it.
Oh,
Uh,
okay.
these other manufacturers don't preset. If they preset and you wanted to chrome or paint, then you could unset them by measuring everything and then set them back to where they're supposed to be. This is something where you got to build the thing, put it on the ground, and then take it apart, make your adjustments and your measurements to get it correct. And
Is it because it's all Heim joints?
yeah,
Yeah, and I mean Heim joints allow you. I hear people say Heim joints are great because if your frame gets a little tweaked, you can still make the bike go straight. Which I think, like, well, you've got a bigger problem than that. If your frame's tweaked, you need a frame. But whatever. I mean, Heim joints. I think I agree with you. Like if you're highly skilled, if you got you or Leon Spiden hanging out, then you can probably get your bike dialed in. But the average guy with Heims on everything is going to get lost.
and,
I
and,
would.
there's so much more into it. If you've ever watched Mike Walsh or JB, some of these guys set the front ends on these machines. It's a science. You're
Right.
tape measure, you're on a flat surface, you've measured the tires. I mean, you're really getting into all of these things to set it. I mean, most of them now have those settings uh, pre-documented so that they just go and they can set everything really super close right off. So they're making minor adjustments instead of major adjustments. But when you get them with they're totally disassembled, you're shooting in the dark. You're guessing.
Right. No, I can see that. Again, it's super, super adjustable and infinitely adjustable for that guy who is at that level that can feel a half a degree difference, but yeah, a little harder to own, a little harder to live with, but
But some of the guys, there's guys in the chat, I guarantee it, like 50 Magic. I'll bet you that guy loves that kind of stuff because he really enjoys spending the time that it takes. But there's other guys that probably don't want to have to deal with it because that's not what they do. They want to bolt that A-arm in and bolt it all together, get it on the ground and look at it or ride it, and enjoy it. So
yeah, it's definitely something to consider before you invest your money in a set of aftermarket A arms. Is what's your skill set? How much time do you want to spend on learning how to dial in a front end, and some of these brands like Hauser, Texera, JD Performance, they all have a fast, kind of a different preset amounts of caster. Makes it really quick, intuitive. You might actually change your caster going track to track. An average guy could do that quickly. So not as infinitely, not down to the micro level, but to the level that you'd feel. So something to think about when you're choosing an AR manufacturer. If there's a lot of ARMs available for your bike.
so
How
far
much?
on the LT 250, basic to my lack of knowledge last time I spoke, I've found three manufacturers that make A-arms. And um,
Who are they? I'd like to know, so that way we're not calling anyone out, but we're calling them all out.
I will release all that information when I'm done a little farther along because I wanted to get some information and talk to all of these manufacturers and their pluses and the minuses. Um, because I want to give them a fair shake. I don't want to just spout off like I did in the last show about the suspension because talking about a brand of arms that I didn't really care for. Um, it's not that I don't care for them like they're bad quality. It's just I don't like the way they're set up. So that's my personal deal. And I let that affect before I got any more education on it. You and I were doing a show, Joe, and we were talking about these builds. And after the show, I realized I didn't have enough information to talk about everything we were talking about. So that's why I'm going extra deep on this LT250 to get these guys the information they ask about. And educate myself on a machine that I don't work on every day. I don't sell a lot of parts for it because people don't come to me first for that level of suspension. So the best I can do to be the guy that I say I am is to get educated to make sure that I'm bringing forth the best information. And JD is one of the guys in the list. Just
Oh,
so
okay.
you, yeah.
Yeah, I like Dave. He builds for the money. He builds a really I like his stuff for the money. Like I don't know how you beat it for the price. It's it's being built in America out of American chromoly in this dude's garage who used to build frames for Legger. So good dude, good welder. Um, his stuff is very reasonably priced. I don't know that dealers love him because his prices are so good it doesn't leave a ton of room for margin. But I've used his stuff on a 400EX in the past, and it was great, no problem.
Yeah, and then for the guys that are using them and having a great deal, that's great. I'm glad. You have to have different levels in the industry that everybody can go to.
Oh yeah, 100%. And I feel lucky because like fortunately in my early days, as Joe the consumer, when I was building my bikes up, it was like, what did we have? Well, you had on the, you had Lone Star, which was building a pretty good quality product, still does, and then on the very affordable end, you had like Burgard Cycles A arms, and hey, they were basic, but they were affordable and they were still made in America out of American chromoly. It wasn't like, well, is this coming from China? Is this gonna, it wasn't as fancy as a Lone Star or, maybe something more than that. I don't know what the bougiest arms you could get for the blaster were back in the turn of the century, but um, now today it's like there's so many people making parts and there's so much shit on eBay that's just pure junk that people look at because it's just cheap. It's quite nauseating. I'm glad I came from a time when even I won't call it cheap, but I'll call it the most affordable stuff was still made here of metal that came from here and parts that pretty much came from here. You know,
So
now
based
it's
on based on that, Joe, everybody in the chat, everybody that listens to this, please chime in because I was looking for a grab bar for a YFC 450, not the R model, the carbureted model for a customer. I brought it up while the customer was in the store. I could not find an American made grab bar for a YFZ 450. Maybe AC Racing is still in business. I
they are.
don't know if they are. And maybe they're building one for this machine and it doesn't come up on the search because everything that came up was super cheap and you knew it was from China. So if you guys have sources that are building aluminum products again in the States, I'd love to see it because I can get a Banshee skid plate from a guy that's made here in the States, a swing arm skid plate, but the grab bar, certain parts, we're struggling to find them.
I don't know if DBR has them or not, but they might.
I didn't think about him right off the top of my head, but yeah,
That's a
he didn't come up in the search.
That's who, if I was wanting a grab bar, an American made grab bar for my YFZ, I would be calling him, I'd be calling DBR or AC Racing first.
Yep.
Those are the first two.
I sent the guy right to those to AC because it's easier to buy direct now than it is for us to have it on the shelf. It's not like the old days where we could have all that stuff on the shelf. Now some of it's not worth carrying because people can find it themselves and buy it direct. The dealer, you brought up dealers, the dealer organization or the dealer system doesn't work the same anymore because the internet broke it.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah. I mean, you can find me by My Parts Direct. You don't have to go to your local Honda dealer or your Yamaha dealer. You call me on the phone, you know, and with the manufacturing cost, there again, comes back to our earlier portion of the conversation. If you guys missed it, when we were talking about the LT 250 cylinder, manufacturing costs have gone up. And no, we're not looking outside the country to manufacture any of this stuff.
And I would say,
Factory 43
I would, that's
did
what
not come up
next one
in
I was going to say.
the chat. They didn't come up in the chat. Or they didn't come up in the when I Googled it, they didn't come up. So there you go. Factory 43. You can reach out to those guys. That's awesome.
They're not,
DVR.
they're Canada, they're not US, but you know, hey, they're North America. They're like a good cousin you got to like. So
You're out of Canada?
yeah, Factory 43 is out of Canada.
Okay. Yeah. So
Great, really nice guy though. Great company, builds cool stuff. Um, I actually bought a whole round of his stuff for my Raptor. It's downstairs sitting on a shelf. When I build my next bougie Raptor build, I'll be rocking some Factory 43 stuff. So looking forward to that. I don't know if he makes a grab bar for the YFZ 450 though.
they're talking in the chat that Factory 43 and DBR makes a XC style grab bar, which that's great, you know.
Cool.
So that I mean, I love these guys. Wrath, do they make it? Because I know they make a lot of Nerf bars, they make a lot of bumpers. I haven't seen uh, the grab bar that I've seen for the YFZ are um I didn't prefer the way it was built, but it's still a solid part, you know, for what, Wrath doesn't make anything bad. It's just I like things a little differently, but that's me. So I think I've earned the right to be a little picky sometimes when I buy things, just like
So
everybody else.
picky. So picky. So picky.
Right. I am sorry, Bust my chat. Bust my ass for it. Thanks, guys, in the chat. I really appreciate you guys chiming in on that. And I will be reaching out to my customer today and telling him to contact DBR. So that'll solve that problem, and that'll get DBR a little more business. I like their ECU holders and some of the other products they build. I'm glad he's back building stuff. For a while he wasn't.
I didn't know that. I haven't called him and terrorized him in a while. I'll have to do that this week.
Checo Racing in PA. They didn't come up in the chat either. So there you go. Checo Racing. We just learn. We're learning. I love it. Thanks, guys. Keep it coming.
Apparently there's a lot of people with websites that need some help from my buddy Brad Dedon. I'll be making some sales calls for him this week, apparently. All these
Yeah,
people with all these parts not showing up in Google.
right. They need to take a deep dive in
SEO.
out there in the Google search or something like that. Um, Hauser Racing makes some of that stuff as well.
I wouldn't be surprised if Hauser did. It's
I've
probably
never
a
been
drop.
on
It's
there.
probably a drop bar, for a cross country style.
Yep, never been on their website, so I don't know. You know, that there again, they just drop all this stuff out there, and that's great. I love it. I'm learning things outside of my normal bubble, and that's excellent. You can never get enough information, you know.
Well, that's one reason it's important for all these American companies to have, if you're selling a high-end product, you need a website that has search engine optimization to where people can find your stuff, because you're up against all this flea crap and Amazon Chinese junk.
Yeah,
So
Amazon, I talk to certain people, and you need brick and mortar stores. Okay, you have to have the brick and mortar guy, because the brick and mortar guy is going to help you talk you through your issues as you're assembling something or when you're building something. you cannot not have brick and mortar. Amazon's trying to eliminate all your brick and mortar. I mean, you
Oh,
look at the,
that's a whole nother discussion. But yeah, I just, me and my wife were shopping for blinds, and it's like, I'm sorry, I can't shop for blinds on Amazon or the internet. Like, I want to see it, I want to touch it. Same thing with a couch. How do you buy a couch off Amazon, or offline? You got to sit on it. How do you buy a mattress offline, without the chance to lay on it? How do you buy a TV that you can't go look at and see the picture? Like, it's amazing a lot of the stuff that's being sold online, that where it's like being able to smell it, touch it, taste it, whatever, depending upon what it is, look at it. You know,
I agree. Totally agree. There's being able to walk in and talk and touch. That's fortunate for the people that live in the areas like LA or, some of the other shops in Ohio where they can walk in, talk to the individuals, touch the product, and get service that way. We have a little bitty tiny showroom where I work, and but we take you out in the shop, show you what we're working on, let you look at the product installed on a machine when I have it there. So it's so great that there's still brick and mortar places, and the education level that you can give. Like you said, Joe, that's a totally different conversation. Guys, we're going to shift gears here and we're going to change to asking Joe some questions about that 700 that they tested. Um, that's a normal test rider for you. He made the machine look really racy and really professional. Uh, is the bike really that controllable and that good?
yeah, I think so. It's tough. It's tough because you know Aaron likes that bike. Like Aaron Meyer, who wrote it, has raced professionally in motocross in the past. He's won a number of national championships in the amateur ranks, uh, at the national level. So he's very good. He's such a level of rider that he can step off a bike, get on a bike after a year, and just blow your mind. I got a buddy that works at Yamaha that was just like, I sent him the test, and I also have a raw edit coming out that's just nothing but action sequences. It's like 8 minutes of just Aaron ripping that quad. And my buddy at Yamaha's like, I could never post any of that footage. But man, does it look cool. I want to go ride a Grizzly like right now. And Jeff at Dirt Wheels was saying the raw action edit that I'll probably just release as soon as we're done here. I'll publish it. Jeff from Dirt Wheels was talking to our buddy Yamaha, and he's like, "This guy's got me wanting to spend money. Like, I want a Grizzly watching this." And Jeff's like, "I never watch long videos all the way through. It's like I'll watch a few minutes and I abandon it." He's like, "I couldn't stop watching it because this guy just ripped this thing the whole time." And it's one of my favorite machines, and I'm a sport quad guy, and so is Aaron, and so are you. But man, like, there's something about that bike, and it kind of gets in my. I'm not really. I want to be careful. Like, I like all the input I get from my viewers, our viewers on ATV on demand, and I appreciate the input as long as it's intelligent. One thing I've been getting a lot that kind of like I got to keep, like, don't get irritated by it. Don't let it bother you, is people saying like, "Oh yeah, that thing was cool when it came out 19 years ago. Yamaha hasn't really done anything to it." To like, bullshit. First of all, that's not true. That's not true. Um, Yamaha widened the bike in 14 when they recalibrated the power steering. They, because it was the first bike out that had power steering when it came out. In 14, they widened it. They recalibrated the suspension. They recalibrated the power steering. In 16, they restyled it, gave it more interior storage, more onboard storage, little cubby holes and stuff. Um, the back one could use some updating, but whatever. They tried a different engine that I believe was a Subaru engine. Don't quote me on that. They tried it for a couple of years. Wasn't didn't quite live up to Yamaha's internal expectations. So after 2 years, they went back to the 686, um, pumped it up a little bit. I think when they put it back in, which is the same top end used by the Raptor, which means the Grizzly 700 has a ton of top end upgrade potential. Um, and plus clutching exhaust, all that kind of stuff. For 25, they updated the power steering. The power steering is so good now. You can put that thing in like full on diff lock. And before, even with power steering, most of the machines that have power steering still, you put them in full diff lock and it stiffens up. That Yamaha, barely, barely. I mean, that power steering takes the fight right out of diff lock. Like you do not have to fight it. You can point it where you want. It's really good. And what I like about the bike is it has enough power to do most of what you want. It's got a little shorter wheelbase than the other competitors, which the only time I think it really could become an issue is if you're crawling up something steep and it's got a little ledge in it somewhere. That short wheelbase will probably make that bike a little harder to get up over that. Whereas something like with a longer wheelbase, like an Outlander 700, same class, a little longer wheelbase, might do that a little easier. But the trade-off is you can wheelie that bike. You can wheelie the Grizzly. You can see in those videos, Aaron comes out of a corner, leans back, hits a bump you can't even see, and puts the thing right into a wheelie and just rides it out. You can't easily just get the front end up on a lot of these 4x4s. And maybe you can with one you own and you're used to it and you're like, you're a liar. But to just be able to hop on it and find the wheelie point and get that front end up, which is great if you got to get over a log. It's great if you got to do a drop off into a creek. It's great if you just want to jump the thing because it's easy to move the bike in the air. And this is one thing I've always loved about Grizzly is there's no other big 4x4, big bore single, especially big bore twin, where you get it off the ground and you're like, yeah, I can move this thing. Like I can actually maneuver this thing like a sport quad in the air. It only weighs 708 pounds wet, which sounds like a lot, but those big bore twins weigh 8, 9, 1,000 pounds, depending upon the one that you pick. That new Outlander XT1000 you rode, that's 1,000-pound machine. If you jumped it and you jumped the Grizzly next to it, your ability to control that Grizzly in the air would be far, far greater. Those big 1000s are like point and shoot.
So I got to ride on a cross-country style terrain track. Would the Grizzly be comparable as far as speed and agility as
Oh,
that?
it's more agile.
So I could probably make it through the wooded areas at a faster pace on the Grizzly versus the Outlander is one of the things that you're telling me.
You might, and that's something where I feel like our viewers have pushed it to a point where at some point in the next year, I wouldn't be surprised if we do a Grizzly 700 versus a 1 liter just to put the shit out because, some of the feedback is valid and some of it's just crap, and I'm not saying who's who and I don't know. But I see a lot of these guys like, oh, Grizzly 700 was cool for like the first 5 years. It's not cool anymore. Okay, our 125 dirt bike's not cool anymore? Is the YZ 125 not cool anymore just because it's been around since the 70s? And yeah, it's changed a lot. The Grizzly hasn't changed quite as much, but it has changed pretty significantly. It's got wider, the suspension travel, the power steering's been done 4 times. It's been restyled. I mean, like, what do you want? I know what they want. They want a 1000. They want an 850 twin and they want a 1000. And I'm kind of there with them as far as I'd like to see Yamaha release a new ground up ATV to the market in some category, just because Kawasaki putting new plastic on a Brute Force 750 that hasn't hardly changed since it was released. It's kind of a letdown. Honda just new name, new styling on a Rincon that doesn't even have power steering at $10,000. Kind of a letdown. I mean, we haven't even tested the Rincon. That's one machine that's just slipped through the cracks. We're going to test it soon. Maybe we'll love it. But just when you look at how long it's been there, they changed the name, they changed the styling, but they don't really change much of anything else. It's kind of a letdown. I mean, I see the ATV people and they want new stuff, and I'm right there with them. But I'm not going to bag on how awesome the Grizzly 700 is just because I want Yamaha to release a twin cylinder, big bore Grizzly, or I guess it would be called a Wolverine at this point because that's now a side-by-side name. But Yamaha, it keeps releasing patents on a new twin cylinder sport 4x4. They are working on one. Whether it comes to market or not, they're not telling us anything, except we work on lots of stuff that never comes to market. I think this thing's coming to market. They just keep updating it. So
let me ask you, if they came out with an 850 that was as agile and as peppy as the 700, would that not beat out the thousands that are out there from Can-Am?
Power to weight ratio is everything.
I agree. I mean, so how much lighter is the 700? You just mentioned it.
Grizzly 700. Now, of course, when you compare it to the Outlander, I'm not looking at the specs right now, but when you compare it to the Outlander 1000 XTP, you're talking about a machine that has B-lock wheels, piggyback shocks, bumpers, a winch, handguards, things that the Grizzly doesn't have that add weight. If you add B-lock wheels to the Grizzly, you're going to add, 45 pounds to it, 40 pounds, 30 pounds, whatever, going from just a cast aluminum B-lock or cast aluminum wheel to a cast aluminum B-lock wheel would add, and the other parts. But I would say probably without looking, I'm guessing the Outlander 1000 XT, whatever the highest trim package is below the XTP, is probably still 900 pounds. So and that's dry. The Can-Am weights are dry weights. The 708 for Yamaha, 708 pounds is the wet weight, full of fuel, full of oil, full of battery fluid, So the Yamaha's, probably a good couple 100 pounds lighter, but it's not just the scale weight that makes the Grizzly 700 just such a sporty monster of a big bore single. It's the fact that they hide it so well. All the weight is in the middle of the bike. When you ride it, you can just tell because, it's 708, but it doesn't even feel like 708. It feels lighter because 708 pounds to move that in the air, if you get a few feet off the ground and you just move the bike a little bit, you can't do that on those big bore Polarises and those big bore Can-Ams. And maybe there's some guy who looks like Batista who wants to tell me I'm full of crap, but, I'm 6 feet, 210, pretty strong.
What's the horsepower difference?
It's pretty different. I think the Grizzly is in like the 48 horsepower range at 708 pounds versus 101 horsepower at 1,000 pounds. I'll tell you this. We're working on a video right now that we shot with Cody Collier a few months ago, him and his mechanic Mike Seegers, and they rode the Gen 2 Renegade, which is still the current platform. Renegade for 25 is still on the Gen 2 chassis and engine, and they rode it back to back with the Outlander 1000 XTP that you rode. And without giving the whole video away, along with increasing the horsepower, which they did on the Gen 3, Can-Am did some magic sauce to mellow it out. It's not, it's still just, you wrote it. It's stupid fast, but it's much more, it's more rideable than it was. It's a little more, it's way more gentle off the bottom with the P drive and the clutch engagement. And it just seems like it doesn't it's got more horsepower, but it doesn't seem like it rips quite as hard. Like they made that motor a little more gentle when they gave it more power.
It's not violent at all. It's very rideable, I really, really enjoyed it. I mean, that's why I praised it so much because, I'm not a 4x4 guy and I have some inadequacies with some body damage. And man, I rode the whole time and had a great time on it and was very surprised that it was good for my body. So what I'm getting at here with the weight difference and the horsepower difference. So roughly if you take it, every 7 pounds is a horsepower, right? So if you estimate we're 300 pounds heavier with the Can-Am versus the 700, just bare number to bare number, right? Got 48 horsepower to 91 horsepower, but you're
You got
300.
40, you got 48 horsepower versus 101 horsepower.
Okay, but
And
you're 300 pounds difference.
right. But you can know what the power to weight ratio is. It just, divide the
It's
horsepower by
48
the weight, and
horsepower.
you'll
That's 48 horsepower difference if you go by weight. If you just add you just take the 7 pounds and divide it by the 300 pounds, that's 48 horsepower. So
I
now,
mean,
if you get,
here's the thing I think we're going to see. Here's the thing I think we're going to see. Because you got all these people complaining about, I'm gonna put my fist down on the table and say Grizzly is a freaking awesome ATV. If I were going to go buy a 4x4 today, it would be on my list of about two that I would really be considering for me. And that doesn't mean for everybody else because everybody's different. Everybody wants different things. I want a motor that I can use, that I can control, that isn't going to easily be too much at a given time and unexpectedly put me on my head. Yet it's got enough balls to get me up anything I want. You know, um, the lightweight and agility, maneuverability, like the Can-Am that you rode, like it really takes care of you. The suspension travel, the power steering, it's super plush, but it's not as rider active. Like your input is not quite as needed as maybe on the Grizzly, but it's because your weight actually has so much more effect on the Grizzly because it's 300 pounds lighter, and they still hide another 100 pounds of it, 150 pounds of it, by just putting it all in the middle of the bike. I mean, it's 300 pounds lighter, and it feels like it's 400 pounds lighter. It feels very light for what it is and how big it is. And that's what's so awesome about the Grizzly. If you're a sport quad guy and you want that rider active feeling of I'm controlling this ATV, not I'm just pointing this ATV and I'm along for the ride, Grizzly delivers that at a level that I don't think most other machines do. And you've got a lot of guys out here that are like, they want a V-twin. They want a twin from Yamaha. And if you want a twin from Yamaha because you want a new vehicle from Yamaha, I'm right there with you. If you want, but if you can't ride it, I'm looking at the way Aaron Meyer is riding that 700. You saw it. If you can't ride at that level, if you can't take that Grizzly out and ring it out, do you need a twin? No, you don't. No, if you can't,
go ahead.
it's like if you can't, it's kind of like it goes back to building a motor. If you can't use all the motor you currently have, why do you need something bigger? Now, maybe, I'm thinking from the utility guy's perspective. Maybe you want to work a food plot and you're like, I want the biggest, heaviest, most powerful ATV I can get so I can pull a tiller, or I can pull a plow. Okay, maybe a 1000 might be a better choice because it has more weight. More weight is going to give you more traction. I think with the Grizzly, you're going to run out of traction before you run out of horsepower. I think With 500s, you typically run out of traction before you run out of horsepower. So, if you want a big old heavy 4x4 so you can get as much grip to the ground to pull a plow, those big twins make a lot of sense. But I just think for the average guy, one, can you afford a $16,000 4x4? Then you probably don't want Yamaha to build you a V twin or a twin. If you can't ride the crap out of that 700, okay, you can think you're better off on that twin, but you won't be, because if you can't ride the 700 to its limit, what do you need more horsepower for? You don't. You don't.
It's ego. It's all ego. Everybody
It's all
buys.
ego. Do you have
Everybody
the credit
buys.
score? Do you have the credit score when you're going in the comments saying what these manufacturers should build? Do you have the credit score to go finance a bike? Do you have the money to buy one? When I say I want somebody to build a sport quad, I will put my money where my mouth is the following year. I will sell or come up with money to go buy something. If I'm saying, oh, yeah, build it, please. We need it. I think it would be fun to take that Outlander 1000 and the Grizzly 700 and put them head to head. And yeah, well, we're going to drag race them for all the low talent, low skill Billy Johnnies out there that think that going out on an asphalt road and pushing the throttle to the, which you shouldn't be doing anyway, and pushing the throttle to the stop and beating your buddy because you have more money and no talent, we'll drag race them. And I sound like such a jerk, but I don't really care. We'll drag race them. We'll drag race them for the sake of the ego of the Outlander 1000 owners who are going to roach a Grizzly 700 in a drag race on flat ground. Then we're going to go out and we're going to lay out a cross-country course with some fast sections and some tight switchbacks and lots of tight corners. And then we're going to see how different it is. And I'm not sure who's going to win that.
Do you think that Can-Am's going to come out with the Renegade Gen 3?
I do. Yeah, I do, because I think they would like to they'd like to use the same platform. I think if they can use the same chassis and suspension design across the board, that simplifies the manufacturing process. And that's, that was, I'm sure, a big benefit to them on the Gen 2 Outlander Renegade 1000s, is that they shared A-arms, they shared trailing arms, they shared the same frame. Obviously plastic was different, but other than that, it was and no racks and no hitch. But other than that, it was very similar machine. And don't get me wrong, I'm not against the 1000s. I think they're incredibly fun to ride, but I also know that I have test riders that are better than 98% of the people out there that ride four-wheelers. And when one of my top two guys, which, is telling me, and I won't say who the top two are, just know that Aaron's one of them. That way everybody else can argue about who's number two. But when Aaron Meyer's like, I have more fun on that Grizzly 700 than I had on the Gen 2 Outlander 1000, the Sportsman 1000, the Renegade 1000. I'm like, Aaron, you really have more fun on the Grizzly than those 1 liter bikes? He says, yeah. I said, why? He says, because they don't feel as top heavy. I'm not worried when I come into a corner and I grab a handful, like I'm going to just overshoot the turn or lose it. The bike just is so much more manageable and light, and my inputs matter. So, I got a top level guy who I bet hardly anyone watching on the internet could touch. I'm sure there's a guy that can beat him, but there ain't many. And I've got a top level guy that's saying that 700 is more fun to ride than the 1000s because I can control it and I can ride the piss out of it. Whatever. I'll get off my soapbox.
I believe that so many people, whether it be sport quad or utility quads or 4x4s, buy or build with their ego versus the practicality. So if you're talking to me about an engine, whether you're racing motocross or cross country or whatever it is, we're going to dissect what you do. Okay. And the first thing I'm going to tell you to do is I need your honest opinion when I answer your questions. So take your ego, put it back in the helmet bag, and put it in the closet, because I don't want your ego. I want your reality to come through so that your package is what you want not what you think you want or what your buddies told you you want. Okay. Most people, when they call, I need all this horsepower, when you get done talking to them, they need a moderate build with rideable, usable horsepower so that they can go out and have a good time, whether they're a racer or a recreational guy. Unless you're racing for money, there are certain things that are an utter waste of time for you. And most people are not racing for money. The people that are there's a very small group of you, and drag racing doesn't prove anything, and the peak horsepower number doesn't prove anything. And if you guys want to
No,
argue, I'm willing to
no, I
have.
think I think if you look at cross country and you look at the pro class now, one of the guys from BNR, one of the brothers, got a podium in the pro class last year on an Outlander 700 single that's very mildly modified. Yes, a couple top guys had some bad luck that allowed him to get that podium. Doesn't matter. That's not what the record book shows. It shows a 700 single podium in the pro class at a GNCC last year. Now, am I saying that top GNCC pros would go faster on big bore singles than they are their twins? Probably not. Probably not. I mean, if they would, that's what they'd probably race. I can't imagine that the class would become faster if they were all on Grizzlies than Renegades. But again, caliber of rider. You're talking about really, really good riders. So I don't know. I like the big bore 1000s. I do. I think they're fun. They're cool. They're neat. If you want to go buy something just so you could be the fastest in a drag race, though, get on Marketplace and go buy Banshee. If all you care about is straight line speed, wrap, go buy a Banshee. Start dumping money into it. You're not going to touch it with anything else.
Right. I agree. And you're going to have a freaking $10,000-$12,000 engine, with a power plant and a special chassis. And, every time that thing hand grenades, which it will, you're going to spend that money all over again. So having the biggest, fastest machine for one run doesn't mean anything, because the guy whose bike didn't break, or the guy that comes out there and beats you the next time, spent the same amount of money.
Oh yeah, but let's be honest. Like, you don't even have to spend that kind of money to do that. I had a 60 horsepower Banshee. Like, that's not a drag Banshee. That's not a drag racing, fire breathing Banshee. That's like a motocross Banshee.
That's fun.
What's that?
Fun to ride. Most people can't handle power.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's like my 60 horsepower Banshee wasn't a $12,000 motor, and it would still, in a drag race, I'd put money up that it would beat the new Outlander 1000 in a drag race.
Probably.
Oh, it would. It would. I'd almost guarantee it. Mm-hmm. I know Banshees can beat Renegades, and I've drag raced a Renegade against the new Outlander. A mildly built Banshee would win. And by mildly, I mean
pipes, carbs, maybe.
Pipes, carbs, ported race gas. That's it.
Yeah. You're that's the average thing that most people want with a Banshee. And they don't need any more than that, because they technically can't ride any more than that. You see the guys building 7 mil stroker cranks to build a dune bike. That's ridiculous. You can't ride it. You can't even use the power, and then you want to put a long swing arm on it. So when you jump it, the swing arm breaks and you crash. Don't get me on my soapbox. It's not like you were telling me when we were talking about the YFC 450R, with the big 3 on it, an ECU, a pipe, and an air intake system of whatever you choose. That's a great machine. You can go and do almost anything you want to do within reason on that machine. I mean, I can't think of one thing. You can go dune ride, you can go trail ride, you can go motocross, you can go desert race. You could do everything with it and have a great time doing it, because it's just a good setup machine. It's built well. Not like some of the things that we've seen in the industry, but You know, it's all in what everybody wants. We spread the show out pretty well today, talking about the different machines, talking about you dropping that Grizzly video. I highly recommend that you guys go watch it because it's fascinating that this machine, as heavy as it is, as big as it is nimble and fun to ride. And I can't wait for them to send it to me so that I can ride it.
Well, we'd have to drag you out for the if we do a 700 versus 1000 shootout just to see what the difference is in capabilities. Maybe we'll see if you want to come out and throw a leg over. Might be
I'd love
fun.
to. I was
What?
just going to ask you, when can you send me that Grizzly so that I can try it out?
It's cheaper to fly you here than it is to send a grizzly there.
Well, okay. Then that's probably what we're going to end up doing.
But don't get me wrong. Because I'm not. I do want to close with this. It's like I'm not trying to Yamaha fanboy anybody. Because Can-Am makes an Outlander 700. That thing is good. It's really good. And we're going to do a big bore single shootout. We've ordered a Honda. We have the Yamaha. We have already told Can-Am that it's coming. We're trying to figure out if anybody still works at Suzuki to get a bike from, because they still have a King Quad 750 that's a good machine. So we're looking to do something in that like 6 to 750 category. Probably not bringing the 570s into this because it'll just get out of hand. But pretty much anything 600 and up, a single cylinder, is going to get invited. So that'll be a lot of fun. And I don't know who's going to win that. Haven't ridden the Honda, and I don't get to make the decision. I'm just the guy who gets the riders and adds up the numbers and films it and scripts it and records it. I'll get to ride them. But I don't know that I'll have any say so in the points spread. I haven't in the other shootouts we've done, but uh,
How many
it this
different machines do you think you'll get?
how many what?
What machines do you think you'll get?
I'll have at least three. I'll have at least the Can-Am, the Honda, and the Yamaha. I'm going to try to get the Suzuki. Um,
Is there any other manufacturers that make a big bore single?
well, okay. The problem is you've got these 570s, and they're not that far off in horsepower, but it would be a 6 or 7, 8 bike shootout. And I think by the time you get to 7, 8 bike shootouts, it's getting really diluted. You don't get to focus as much on what's there. So we're trying to keep the numbers down. We've thought about do a big bore and then come back maybe next year and do like everything between 5 and 600 cc's, which would be like King Quad 500, Sportsman 570, um, uh, the Honda Foreman Rubicon 520s, those bikes. One that I'm considering we might invite, but I don't want to create a bunch of crap where people are like, well, how come you didn't ask anybody else? Our CF Moto is a brand that we've gotten a lot of interest in us testing. I got a really great email the other day. I have to respond to this guy because he was so nice. And he was like, oh, ATV on demand, you guys are the leader. And not my attitude, but this is what he said. And I love it, appreciate it. He said ATV on demand is the leader in unbiased ATV testing online at this point. Everything that CF Moto has out there seems to be from either dealers or influencers who are getting paid. So I'd really like to see you guys test some CF Motos. CF Moto has a 600. The actual displacement is just under 600 cc's, even though they're calling it a 600. So does it belong with the 570 class of machines since it's under 600 cc's, even though, or does it belong with the 600 and up single cylinders? We'll make that decision. I think maybe if Suzuki doesn't want to send a King Quad 750 to participate, we might just say, hey, CF Moto, you want to call it a 600? Welcome to the shootout. We'll see.
I think you should do both of those stories. And if they call it a 600, you need to put it in the 600 class, even though it's just a little smaller bore, just because that's what they call it. So,
And we've done that before, because back in 2010 when we did the 450 motocross shootout, part of being in the motocross shootout was you needed to be kind of a little wider machine. The Polaris Outlaw 450 MXR wasn't in that 48-inch plus category. It was 47 inches, which at the time was kind of like most cross country bikes were coming out at 46. They're a little wider now. It was 47, and then everybody else who had motocross bikes, Suzuki, Yamaha, Can-Am, everybody who had made track bikes were all in that 48.5-inch to 50-inch range. So Polaris called it an MXR, so we included it in the shootout. And yeah, we may do that with the CF Moto 600 if they want to play, and I think they will.
awesome, awesome, awesome. We got some great things to look forward to, gentlemen. Hey, in the chat, thank you guys so much for participating and giving me some great information on other companies to check into. I like Joe said, I try to be very unbiased when it comes to ATV talk. When I'm in my normal other job, I am not biased, or I am biased. There are things there that I am strictly going to use because that's the way I do it over there. But here, I want to open it up. I want to learn things about some of these other companies and some of these things that you guys are doing because it makes it better, a better show, brings other people in. They're allowed to grow as well. But when I'm building something in my other day, in my other job, it's a totally different story. So please don't get upset if you talk to me on the phone there and I am biased and I'm not going to use something that I feel won't suit your needs. So Joe, it was an amazing show today. I want to thank you so much. Hopefully we can get into more of these things next week, next Sunday if you're available, and I'll have some new topics for us.
I will. We'll see if I'm available. We're still in the middle of a side-by-side build from hell. I've kind of departed ways a little bit while they put in a few some clutch components and stuff. While they're working on a few issues, building side-by-sides isn't easy, guys. I'm gonna be honest with you. It's not. It's not always as easy as building like a sport quad. It's a little more complicated when you start adding bolt-in gusset kits and winches and bumpers and does all this stuff go together? It doesn't always go together exactly. So yeah, hopefully I'll be available. If not, I might be filming an oil change on a side-by-side for Maxima. Who knows?
Nice. Well,
I'll let you know.
that'd be great. Either way, we'll be here next Sunday. And we'll be talking ATVs. I can always get into it with the chat again. They were great last time and helped us out. We will not be here on Easter Sunday. We'll be spending time with family, and at least that's what we're supposed to all be doing anyways. Have an amazing day, guys. Thank you again for being in the chat. Joe, enjoy your Sunday. Guys, we'll catch you next time. Talk to you later.
Have a good Sunday, guys.